Well, hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of Harebrained Games. Today we're going to do a review of a game called Sea of Legends. Now, Sea of Legends has been out for over a year now. It features designers local to me, actually, in Zach and a few others. Anyway, the idea is it is intended to be a dynamic, driven, narrative-based, narrative-enhanced, whatever, pirate experience. So it's a narrative storytelling adventure, takes place partially on a map on your gaming table, and then there's an app that will fill in the details with a story generation, story crafting system. How does it fare? Well, let's go see. All right, let's take a look at what comes in Sea of Legends. You get a map. It's not a large map, but that's okay because a lot of the player's tableau area is going to fill up the rest of the table. So this will take a sizable amount of space. On your, I haven't set that up yet. On your, matter of fact, this is from a previous game. We'll take those off. What you've got here are various locations. You've got your just regular water places, and then you've got your land places, your ports. Each port has a different specialty action you can do when you're in it. It has a way to attack it and some gold when you actually beat it up. That's it. That's actually it for the map. It's a conduit. It's sort of a central ground, but it's not necessarily the star of the show. We'll get into that when we get into the app. What you also have, each player gets a, don't need that. You get you the player, you the pirate, and then you get a love interest. They call them lovers, but in our household, because I have kids and I don't want to explain all that, we're doing love interests, BFFs, whatever. And then you have your nemesis, and these work hand in hand to benefit and distract you in ways that will complicate your quest to become the greatest pirate in the Caribbean. Everyone starts off with a small amount of crew, noted by the smaller cards. Big cards are the stars. These are the fill-in actors and actresses. And then you get a ship. Mine is the Peanut. We'll start with there. If you conquer ports, you get to put your flag on them. They will gain you gold and money that you will earn as you play. These are markers for, these are markers for where you're at on the map, where your love interest is, and where your nemesis is. You also have a bunch of decks, and each of these decks, there's a deck for the three factions. These are sort of NPCs that are gonna populate the area of the Caribbean while you're playing. You've got taverns, which a bunch of different things, different items, rumors, trinkets, all kinds of baubles that any pirate would love and adore. Crew, you have an opportunity to purchase crew. When you purchase crew, they give special abilities that will aid you in your quest. And finally, ships. You can at any time, when you get to a certain port, trade in your ship for a better ship, which will give you better ship statistics. You also have little markers, you have money, 5 and 1 coin increments, and then you have notoriety. Notoriety is the end game condition. 10 notoriety at the end of a round is a win. You also have dice. These are the 4 you always roll in every challenge, and then you can earn and accrue additional dice over the course of play through clever card play. We have ourselves the 3 factions we're going to begin in this example game, and we have the Spanish Galleon, the Undead Soldiers, well, what we have is the Spanish Armada, Dreadtide, and the Children of Talak. These are the recommended ones to start with in the manual. Each have their own decks, they have their own units, they have their own rule sets on how their AI rule sets, their little booklets, like my new little tracks we used to give out. Hey! And then you've got your core card here, and usually there's also another mighty creature. Why? Because a lot of these have the little guys. These are the undead soldiers, but then they can turn into skeletal colossus. Dun dun dun. Fear me. Anyway, and here we've got the Children of Talak. So you get Tetsautl, who's man, I hope he doesn't get a head cold. Anyway, all right. And that's it, but that's not it. You also get a variety of different captains to start with. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 captains to start with. Each one with their own special abilities, their special unique traits, etc. You have a variety of love interests and nemesis. The same person could be both a love interest or a nemesis. And they'll mess you up. And these are the cards for each of the factions. And then you have the factions themselves, and there are a ton of them. I mean, there are a ton of them. These factions, you get the Fotberry. And then you've got this faction and its angry creatures, the Aztecs. I mean, you get a ton of plastic minis and fun in the box. You also get a rule book, which is I'm not going to review it yet, but I'm going to tell you it's suboptimal. You have the other rule book, which I printed out in black and white because I wasn't going to pay $27 for the color version to print it out and have it delivered. And I only have a black and white printer, but anyway, the two go hand in hand and they work okay. Then let's get to the star of the show, and that is the app. I've just loaded it up and I'm just about ready to show it to you. And this is, yay, yeah, this is going to happen a lot. I've run into this quite a few times where different, so this is the new app, but it doesn't really matter. The old app was just as flaky, but if you can download and get it running afterwards, then it generally all of these error messages and download options and failed this and failed that. I have yet to see one actually corrupt my game. I'm glad about that. So we're going to start an adventure. This is the new app, like I said. I highly recommend you use the new one, not the one they shipped with when the game Kickstarter copies were released. A lot of options. Report a problem. Definitely, if you feel so inclined to beta test, do that. And then starting adventure, yeah, let's delete the save game. You only get one save game, so you don't get to run multiple games unless you have multiple accounts, which I do, but I'm going to use my main one. We're going to use Sasir. Let me just show you a little bit about that. Darn it. Is he sincere? I think he is. All right, so we're going to load it up. And this is the cool part. We're going to set him up. We're going to give him the love interest we have is Clara. So let me clarify that for you. And then the nemesis is going to be Axe Fist, as recommended. All right. Looks good. Continue. Nice big buttons. We have chosen their suggestion, which is to use the Children of Tlaloc and the Dread Tide. And that's it. That's the setup. I kind of went through the game components and got right into the setup. But now we're going to take a break, and then we're going to start an actual game using the pieces, components, and the configuration that we have set up here. Okay, let's begin. Now let's talk about the two things you do, or the two focal points you have in Sea of Legends. Obviously you have the app, and then you have the game board. Now during the game board play, you've got a lot of things going on that aren't related to the computer portion itself. These are for the standard sort of actions you're going to do, your movement, and whatever you can do in a port, things like that are all handled on the map, in the map area. Matter of fact, we're going to put Cesar here at his starting location, which is in Skull Point. Clara, we're going to put her token in Port Royal, and we're going to put Mr. Axe Fist in Claw Bay. Rico, Claw Bay. All right, there we go. Now we're ready to roll. So now that we're set up with that, we're going to go through the round, and these nice player turn cards kind of tell you what to do. Every player takes a turn. Then the factions take a turn, and then we get rolling. So here we go. We have movement. Well, you can do movement, or you can do a port action or player action, and it doesn't matter which order you do them in. So let's go with that. So the first thing we're going to do is take a look at why we would want to go and where we would want to go. Now, starting out, I've got my regular crew. I've got my ship. You want to do adventures to beef up your Miss Clara here, or you want to do adventures to be able to take care and thwart your nemesis, because your nemesis is always on your back, always messing with you, hounding you, nagging you, leaving the seat up, not, whatever, having the fan on at night, etc. Whatever, you get the point. And so Intimidate is always going to be there for you to mess with you during challenges. On the other hand, Clara here has an upgrade that for every flower strength you roll on the dice, and these dice have numbers 1, 2, and then your nemesis, your captain, and your love interest. For everyone there, you gain a strength during challenges. This is all great and good. So we can move, and you can actually traverse the entire map, I think, in about 4 turns. Well, it's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 to go kitty corner across the map. Anyway, so what we're going to do is we're going to start with and just show you how to do an adventure. Because, well, we got to get there. We're going to move. First we'll do, yeah, let's do the prologue. Let's do the prologue first. Yes, let us do the prologue first. Okay, so this is basically a little kind of a tweaker of your experience. Every time you start an adventure, you're gonna do this prologue, and it's gonna give you just a little bit of a tweak so that it's not the same every time. And these stories are all generated to be different. They're meant to be very interesting and not cookie cutter, so let's find out. You're at the docks when a lavishly bearded priest with a grim expression approaches you. You tense up for a fight, but he just holds up a wanted poster from the Dreadtide, depicting a silver-scaled merwoman. It says, "Itzel the In-Depth Seer, wanted for being a seaside charlatan. The reward is quite handsome. Have you seen this flesh kind? You have, right now, fleeing into an alley behind, silent as sea foam." So these stories kind of go into branching. You have a choice. Do I tell the priest? Do I help the thief? Whatever. I'm gonna help. I'll help the thief. Oh, you point the heretic in the wrong direction and hurry after the thief. She's waiting for you, eyeing her target, knife poised. I don't want to fight. Good, because I couldn't give back what I stole even if I wanted to. Someone already took it. She whips her tail. I'll need to recoup my loss another way. Care to join me? I'm always up for an adventure, you say. I'm Itzel, she says. I have a lead on a sword wreathed in ghost fire. Let's sail to Nassau. There's a mysterious statue we need to investigate. Results. Itzel will remember this favor, and then you gain legendary crew card from the Children of Tlaloc deck. Well, that's kind of cool. So we already are helping out our friends, the faction, whatever. So anyway, so we go find the card, the legendary crew. Itzel's legendary crew card. Itzel's legendary crew card. That's kind of cool. Exhaust to move into or through sea regions with hostile followers without making a challenge. Ooh, you go. Place your Captain Adventure token in Nassau. All right, so in order to continue on this fine quest, we need to place our token in Nassau. Oh, that's not far. Cool. All right, now we've done our adventure. We've had fun with that. That's cool. And again, I'm not going to give away too much in it, but now we've done the adventure part, but now we can also do movement. Again, you can move, or you can move and do a player turn, or player turn and then move. So let's move here. Move our 2 spaces. How do we know? Movement on our ship tells us how far we can move. All right, so then we go there, and then we're poised for the next turn. Now that we're done, the factions take their turn. Now the factions are interesting because they march to the beat of their own drum. They really do. If you have them out, they have a set of places what they move towards. The Spanish Armada is always there. It's always traveling around. It's always trying to mess with you. It's going to try and take any port that's been taken over. It's going to try and take over as well because it wants to own the Caribbean. And so it will do that. Otherwise, it will kind of hunt you down or other NPCs. And that's the beautiful thing is these guys are going to go at each other just as much as they're going to try and go after you. And you get to steer that. You get to manipulate that in different ways. At times where you're like, hey, if I position these guys together, they're going to go beat on each other. And that's going to free me up to not have to basically take the brunt of all of their angst. All right, Dreadtide. Undead soldiers. Yeah, and the Dreadtide are interesting because they're always, once they're on the map, and right now we're early on in the game, so we don't have anybody out there yet, except, oh, I take it back, we always start with a Spanish galleon in the game. So what we do is, let's just follow in. So move towards weaker captured ports. No captured ports yet. If no weaker ports have been captured, pursue players or weaker hostile NPCs. So the only thing we have out there right now are us, and they have no win condition. They're just there to mess you up. And one of the things they are is cautious, and because they're cautious, they're not going to just make a breakneck mad dash towards you if there's enemies in the way. They're going to take the shortest path that's safest for them. In this case, Just going to go here. We're going to head there. All right, they're on their way. And the rest of these will come into play over time. And how that happens is, at the end of the faction turn, you're going to draw a card, and it's going to say Dreadtide. All right, Dreadtide. So the first thing you do is you update the strength. So now their strength when they attack is 3. If there's multiple of them or multiple of other factions that are allied with them, then there's a bonus for each one after that. And yeah, and there you go. So then we follow and we do everything. Increase the if we're at strength 3, and we are at strength 3, then we place one undead soldier in Claw Bay and Cartagena. So we go Cartagena and Claw Bay. All right, and that will do it. And then we discard that card. You're going to go through this deck, and each of the 3 factions have 3 cards. And so after 9 turns, you're going to just shuffle and keep going. And they're going to advance out, and it's your job to. I mean, it's going to get overwhelming unless you're careful. So there we go. So we've done the faction card. That's the event, and there we go. Then we pass the first player token back to the same person it was, because I'm showing you a 1-player game. And then we do it again. Now I'm just going to cut to the chase and kind of show you some different things. When you arrive at, again, you could do your captain quest, and here, let me show you the map. So when it is your turn, if you want to do an adventure, we now have, in the latest version of this game, this map, and it shows you. You can see that it makes sense. Everything's where it's supposed to be on the map, and then you decide if you are here, you can do this quest. If I bring my captain down here, I can do this quest, and go on. So you'll be like, hey, I'm here. So it continues the story on, gives us a little bit of text. How complicated? Do we start pulling levers? Blah, blah, blah. Read the text. Blah, blah, blah. Challenge 6. Not ready to... Well, let me show you how the challenge works. Let's say I do that. I have to do a challenge. What that means, I'm just going to show you that now, is when you have a challenge, you roll 4 dice. Always. You always get 4 dice. Then you have an opportunity to use a crew member, or if you have special abilities from your 2 lovers and haters here, to get bonus die. So say I exhausted that to do a bonus die. Well, cool. Then I'm going to take a bonus die. Getting 6 is pretty tricky right now, because 4 dice, the most I could theoretically get 6, but man, that's going to be not easy. But we're going to show you. All right. So look at what we got here. This is bad for winning. So we have these 2 and these 3. We didn't have one single strength point. Not at all. But what is our special ability? For every one of these, gain 1 strength. So that's 3 strength, which would be great, except we don't really have any other benefits to exchange that into a 1. That doesn't help. That a movement. And so we would get 3 strength. We don't make the challenge, obviously. That was a tricky one. If you roll... And then we have these here. If you roll... Right now, we haven't upgraded the Axe Fist to his greater powers. If we did, then it would be even more dire based on the number of these things that we resolve at the end. So we have 3 strength. We don't have enough. We're going to lose, but we're still going to resolve this. If you roll 1 or more, exhaust 1 crew. Okay, fine. I'm going to exhaust that one. And you can unexhaust them when you take a port action. Then all of your crew unexhausts, and you can use them again. All right, so just out of curiosity, if we were to roll, yeah, you can see getting a 6 is going to be, you're going to need a lot more dice. And so anyway, so we lost that one. So what do? We go back to the app. We start pulling levers. We failed. So then we get some more story, and we still got gold. Yay! And then we go place our captain adventure in the next spot, etc. So... that's that. And again, once you do, you have different quest lines for your villain, or for your arch and your nemesis and your love interest, etc. And this is the way the game is going to go. When you go into port, this is the last thing I'll show you. Based on what the port value is, you can do things. This here says you can buy a ship. You can trade in your ship and buy another one. You'll see that the stats on these are greater. As you buy ships, you're gaining notoriety. Winning the game is about notoriety. Notoriety can be achieved by grabbing relics. And say, hey, you've got notoriety while you hold this. Notoriety can be achieved. Man, there's all kinds of ways to get notoriety. having a crew. Every cost of 10 value as you buy these. If you get extra crew that's like, hey, this is 4, 5, and 3, well, that's 12, so you're going to get a notoriety because your crew is 10 strength and better. There's just a lot of different unique ways to get notoriety. It's kind of cool, actually. It's one of the nice parts of the game is kind of the different ways that you can go about getting notoriety. For example, here, like if you beat the Skeletal Colossus and he's a mighty thing to beat, well, you're going to get 2 notoriety, etc. And that's the way it is. The game is going to go. It's pretty free flowing, even though there's rounds and turns. It kind of just weaves in and out. The big thing again is once you get your factions in these different areas and they're moving around and they're moving to the beat of their own drum, you're going to get some very interesting interactions as the map fills up. Particularly when I think about taking some of these out too, because if it gets too full, you're going to be really hurting. Anyway, that's kind of a sample of Sea of Legends. Again, we'll show you this. Yeah, you got everything you need. We save and quit. Life is good. And yeah, so that's what we got. Let's get into my final thoughts on Sea of Legends. Alright, Sea of Legends. As always, we go over the cons first, then we go over the pros, then we give my final thoughts on this. First, the cons, and there's one big elephant in the room, and that is the sort of the Kickstarter rollout experience that that those of us who backed it right away went through. Varying degrees of success. To me, it was quite a disappointment given the huge potential of the game when it first arrived. It arrived DOA. I had plenty of minis and legends. I could read up for it for a long time until the app actually came out. When it did come out, it was buggy to install. Had some crashing, had some strange things going on with the stories and stuff. Ultimately, it was just crash and burn. And so I did what I usually do when I don't have a good experience with a game. I set it aside and set a timer to come back a year later. I've done that with several games before. Sometimes I've seen success. Sometimes I've found it to be just as bad. Either way, you're going to know my thoughts on it one way or another. Now, I will say that the timing was great because when I came back to it, again, the timer went off, but I still waited a little bit, whatever. But the time since when I was about to dive into it again is also the same time when the second revision of the app that supported it came out. And I found that while I still was victimized by lots of different weird download and crashing and errors on loading and stuff like that, none of those actually were fatal, in that they didn't stop me from eventually being able to get into the game itself. And so that's good. It's there's still some PC features I'd like that are available in the tablet arena or in the app arena, phone arena, but in general I think the audience is likely going to be using tablets and phones and not necessarily PCs. The app itself, once past the pain, is solid now. I think that the story generation is solid, so I think we're okay there. There's some extra UI features that sort of bring it up to parity with what I would expect. The biggest problem is that when you have a stumble out of the gates sort of experience with an app-driven game, all you're doing is ideologically putting gas on the fire of people who are already dissenters of apps, of whom I wasn't, because in general, the one thing I didn't want, I've always been like, what, apps are fine. I don't hate them. I don't love them. They're fine if they bring the experience to the game that the designers want, or add, take advantage of things. There are some people who absolutely, on a purist level, will not do it. If they sit down for a board game to play a board game, oftentimes do get away from the technology aspect. Totally fine, 100% agreements. This one, I think, did a disservice because I do not want people bringing their video game dev cycle into my board gaming. I deal with that on a daily basis. I've done video game development since '96. I know the ins and outs. I'm able to filter through it, but I don't want that. I don't want that to be a trend. I really hope that doesn't start to be a trend. There's already existing concerns that people have about apps, like what happens when the app doesn't get updated and a new version of this, platform comes out. What happens if designers just go, never mind. It's just, there's already these existing concerns. So why add a bad Anyway, let's let the bygones be bygones. I've said my piece on that because generally speaking, I have had a surprisingly good streak of success with app-driven games and not having to worry about the stupid beta crap. World of Yoho wasn't. It had some snafus for others. I was able to play it well, and it was that was 6 years ago. XCOM the board game, even longer ago, with its app-driven experience. You've got any game from Final Fantasy is Forgotten Waters, Familiar Tales. My Father's Work had a little bit of a synchronization issue too, with like, here's the pieces, but we don't have the app ready. But when it did come out, it was solid, solid, solid. Don't make me think about your app. Don't make me worry about your app. Make me play. Make it so I can play your game and go, oh, okay, that fits well. Like, just don't do that. Do not make me beta test your game. And I completely identify and support with those friends of mine who also pre-ordered it, because we did it as a pair, and got burned, and they're like, I'm not looking back, you're dead to me. And I totally, totally identify with that. I, on the other hand, am a little more forgiving. It's like, whatever, here we go. Let's see if the game's worth it once we're past this mess. And because the other thing is, this is a far more ambitious app than some of the other games, too, that are sort of just leading you down a particular very simple path and whatever, keeping safe with the technologies, etc. That ambition is commendable. It's still not a license to bring your beta testing mindset en masse into the mix. So this definitely burst the bubble on my optimism that we would stay true to making sure that the app was not a fail point in your experience as a game. The other issues is that the rulebook doesn't help, because if the app's not really going well, then your rulebook better be solid, and it wasn't. The rulebook was rewritten. It's better now. It just compounds the already extant problems that are going on. If you're a diehard, you can bowl through all this just fine. If you really want to learn the game, you can do it. Even with the original, you can kind of make your way through it and figure it out, but I wouldn't recommend it to casual people going, oh, that looks fun. I like the art. Let's try that. The reorganized manual is much, much better. I'm not thrilled with having to print them out and go, side by side. I don't have a color printer. I'm not going to pay $27. Well, I guess I did to go have it printed and whatever. But that's another thing where when you have a FAQ as long as your manual, you have an issue. Solve it. You didn't bring your A game to the table in that regard. The other thing is a single point of entry to this game. Like, you got the manual, you got the app. None of them really cohesed into, where do I start? Where's the starting point? Where it is. In a lot of app-driven games, the app tells you what to do. It does the setup for you. It actually works to your advantage. It is the worker that helps you have an easier time getting through the game. None of that's here. There's you got app, rulebook. When both of these are askew, you're left floundering on the seas, going, okay, well, we'll bowl through it and figure it out. Not the first line you want from your game. Don't make the customers have to piece together what to do. This isn't a mystery novel. The other thing is, there is a clear separation between the app and the game, and it's pretty large. The app doesn't dictate to you what to do. It doesn't flow through the game standards for you. It doesn't, and that's something I've come to expect from a lot of games that do that. And I have almost every app-driven game, that's even remotely been popular ever, because I actually do kind of like the idea of them, and so I want to support them. The app is there on the side for one part, and then the board's on the other side. There is a little bit of a connection there, but it's not deep, and it's not one side being dominant to drive the other. It doesn't dictate the order of the rules of play. It's truly complementary, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with having an app and the game be side by side, as long as they can fuse together and give the player something to know what to do. It's not the driving force, in contrast, again, with Perilous, Mansions of Madness, XCOM, whatever. And so what you're left to do is you're going to go over here for the narrative part, and then you're going to flip back here to go to the game, and just a little token here or there to go flip over back to go context switch between these two spheres of play that are at play here. That might not be great for some people. It's not a big. It wasn't. That part isn't the big deal to me, because it's fine once you understand. Like, these are going to go back and forth like two pistons firing, not like a horse driving a carriage kind of thing. And the other thing is, I know that there's some gamers who are minded like me in a conservative fashion that are going to find some crew configurations that you may wish to bypass. The other thing is playing with kids, and we don't call them lovers, we call them BFFs, because I'm not going to explain to a 4-year-old who loves the art, loves the game, loves the stories. We're not going to get into that advanced topic quite yet. That's not a con against the game. It's just a caveat or some helpful information for some of the audience who I know directly and locally. Now let's get into the pros. That was a pretty long con. Haha, the long con. I made it for the long con. The art. Let's talk about the art. Whoever did the art, whatever group did the art, should be knighted. It's like amazing. It is absolutely evoking of exactly the type of experience that the stories tell. You can see the artwork, you can see the characters, you can see the personalities. The art demonstrates the personalities of the narratives in the game. The map is gorgeous. The minis are just incredibly detailed and incredibly unique and awesome. The cards, I love the tarot-sized cards for the primary players at play. I love the crew cards. Everything's evocative. It's exactly the right art style and exactly the right art skill for this game. I absolutely love it. It's one of the, I mean, when I opened that box when I first got it, it was the high point that matched the low point of the app. Story generation, again, it's aggressive and it's gutsy to have this kind of story building affair. And honestly, in the playthroughs I've done, and I've done like 1 to 4 player games and done them. I've done a lot. I've done a lot of fleshing through the new app, and I can say that the story generation, I ran into relatively few like similarities where I'm like, hey, did they kind of, these kind of really the same thing kind of stuff. And dynamic story generation can really be a mixed bag. Back in in my first gaming job, there was a was it LucasArts or whatever, they did this lunchtime series of Yoda's desktop adventures. No two adventures are alike. And that's a classic example of a game where they just basically, you randomize a dungeon, but everything else is the same. It's not interesting. It's not just because the story is dynamically generated doesn't mean it's going to be interesting or new or refreshing each time. It's not the dynamic story generation. It's the dynamic story template generation. It's the way you can create new and interesting arcs and sub arcs that happen, and make those actually feel like they're plausible and entertaining at the same time. That's the secret sauce that makes awesome story generation happen. There's a RimWorld, I think, PC game that I think does that just like magnifique, probably one of the best I've ever seen. Because otherwise, an example would be like you have a Mad Lib, you fill it out with different information. Okay, ha ha ha, everybody laughs. You take that same Mad Lib, you fill it out with different information. Technically, it's a different dynamic story. You don't care. It's the same stupid fill-ins. So you really want that sort of, you really want to not have to feel like you're just doing this and going through the motions if you're going to have a story generation kind of thing at all. And in this case, you want to make sure, if you're doing this kind of story generation stuff, that you don't make people see underneath the surface that you're, how it's all going together and ruin the mystique. And here it succeeds. You don't need the cookie, different cookies, but you have different cookie cutters that are intelligently adaptive to a story and the beats, and you've got some serious interest to it. If you can make me forget that I'm reading a dynamic story and make it think like it's, this is kind of a custom crafted thing, you've won. And I think this one wins. I really do. I think it wins. Now, again, this isn't going to create an overarching, compelling, well-written, finite campaign where everything's in place. You built the world, you built the stories, everything's finite. It's for you to discover. I love those. Waste Nights is an example of that. There's tons of others, role-player adventures, stuff like that. And so you're not going to see that sort of high-level piecing every single thing here together. Instead, what you're going to do is you're going to get a set of very entertaining short stories featuring the same characters rather than a whole novel. That you can sink your teeth into and feel sad when you read the last page. That's stuff. And so you do get this nice, interesting group of stories and subplots and whatever. They don't always conclude on, you're not always going to be able to finish them all. I suppose they suggest you do. You're not going to finish them all, but that's okay. I mean, it's kind of a bummer when you don't get to see the story win. I'd love to. I wonder if they could do something with that and just like a prologue or epilogue or something, or it's just like you kind of craft this. Once you're done, you win or lose, you kind of make this Anyway, faction management. Let's talk about the actual faction management, because while you're doing this narrative over there, the world of the Caribbean is being filled by not three, one required and two you get to pick factions that are going around, going along, living their lives in the universe. This is one thing that I actually think. And again, those who know me know Merchants and Marauders is still, even after this, my favorite game, my favorite pirate game. It has not been dethroned since. It is the quintessential pirate game. But this does something actually better than Merchants and Marauders, and that is it imbues the Caribbean with a life all its own through the factions. That is really cool. It's hard to explain, but when you usually, when you've got like, okay, here, you do your turns, and then you go like, okay, now make these map changes. Oh, there's a ship, move it towards the closest player, or whatever, or oh, here's an event, global event, move everyone back to to shore because there's a storm or whatever. None of that, all of that feels staged and rote. None of it feels alive and vibrant. Not like you're in this world, but you're not the feature. You're not the prime feature. This faction system is easy overhead. Once it is easy overhead. As you learn the factions, and you can learn them over, you can use the same ones and learn over and over, you're going to find that these factions, with just a couple pages of rules, have some very unique motivations and styles of manifestation of how they roll in this universe, and an interesting challenge beyond just add 2 enemy cubes to end space at the end of your turn. It breathes life and style into these factions. You'll know them by heart without even knowing their names, just based on what they're motivating, what they're doing. And it's not just simple attack and destroy, attack and destroy. I love it. It keeps you hopping, but it also keeps all the other factions hopping. These factions fight with each other. They have motivations with each other. They're going at each other, and it's perfect. It brings about the perfect pirate mentality for this game. It's pitting everything in the water against everything else in the water, and you, the pirate, are trying to hope to escape peril or have someone, distract them and, or exploit, while things are going at each other. So factions are all about filling that world, with life, and it does it. It's absolutely stellar. It's a faction system that I think is probably the favorite feature I have of this game that I wish other places would adopt, because it really brings a static map to life when you have all that interaction, and not all of it gives a crap about you, the players. It does care about you, the players. They want you dead too, but it cares about everything else going around. And finally, I know different experiences have been explained by people, but I actually have found that the dev interaction has been very responsive and helpful. Yes, it went out of the gates. No, I'm not happy with how it went, but I am happy with the updates. I'm happy with the periodic kind of, hey, we're working on it. We're working on this redo. Yes, we could spend our lives sitting in misery going, wow, this didn't go well. Or we can go, let's get it right. Let's get it right. Because there's another Kickstarter on the horizon, which they did very I think it was very integrity rich to wait on that until they'd really gotten this to a state where it could be recommended for players and have a lot of the issues resolved. And so, they clearly want you to like this game. And so that adds a lot. That covers a multitude of sins when it comes to, stuff not going right and everything. And there's plenty of satisfying replayability here. Like, you've got plenty, in the narrative, you've got plenty to enjoy, nearly endless enjoyability. But even in the action, in the factions, and moving around, you have, now again, not Merchants and Marauders, you want to feel like a pirate. It's got all the nuances of ship combat and all this stuff. This is really, again, this focuses on the narrative. You're doing a narrative game, and there's a lot of rewards, tons of rewards. Like, every encounter, it's not usually like the games where, like, okay, you have this encounter, take 17 damage, and here's a toy boat. You usually get something pretty cool no matter what happens. Even if things go awry, you're going to get something out of it. So that's kind of a nice feeling. It's kind of cool. So, in summary, as we finish up my long, blustery thing, Sea of Legends is, when I first got it, I'm not going to lie to you, I rated it a 1, because a game I can't play isn't a game that I can even, it's unplayable, would not play again, because I can't. And then while I was waiting for things to go, I bumped it up to a 4 because I saw the efforts and the energy. When I started the second revision of the app to go, I gave it a 6 because I thought, yeah, it's not fun to have download problems and C# errors, exception errors showing up when you click play. But then And that's the problem, is that like my score right now, if I was to give it one, and I'm going to because that's what I'm doing, is going to be a 7, which is sad because it really doesn't. It's one of the rare times when I can't just say I can rate it a 7, but it's not good enough of granularity, because as far as the app and the experience of the past, I'm saying it's a 4 at best. On the app and experience now, I'd say it's a 6.5 to 7. On the ingenuity and the art and just the fun and the feel of the game, it's a 9. Um, yeah, so I mean, it's one of those things, like you got a floor routine in the Olympics, and it's like you get a 5.2 on technical merit, but you get a 5.9 or 6 on artistic. That's kind of what this game is. You know, one of the people described it as beta test kit with an alpha test app. And then blew it, and he ain't coming back. I can't convince him to come back. But another person was like, finally, now we're at where it's meant to be. Now we can roll. And now those are kind of the two mindsets you can have. Is this an M&M? Merchants and Marauders replacement? No, nothing is. Is it better than Forgotten Waters? It can be. It can get there. Yeah. Actually, Forgotten Waters is truly narrative in a different way. I think they both have merit. Forgotten Waters, if you don't know, that one is a game. It's got a book, it's got an app, and you play it, and it's got some fun. You've taken parts of it. That one has, they're just different. They're different enough that I don't think you're going to find an overlap there. Just because it has a pirate theme doesn't mean, that they have to be competing against each other. I can watch Black Sails and the pirates who don't do anything, and they don't need to compete, and they still have a pirate theme. As for the Kickstarter, I know that there's a new Kickstarter out on the horizon that's coming up, and one of my friends like, well, are you going to back it after all you went through? And I'm like, yeah, I am, because I think they matured enough in the app now, and I'm just sour grapes, don't need them. So I'm going to back it because I think they've done that. From what I've seen of the improvements, they've got extra factions. They've got the new updated app, and they're going to keep on that. And they've got the actually, I think they've got some new faction sheets that kind of make it a little simpler as far as what each faction does. The little flow charts that aren't so overwhelming that you feel like you're playing a coin game, a pirate coin. Ooh, a pirate coin game. Anyway, yes. So if you are someone, if there is a time to jump on the Sea of Legends train, it's finally time that you can do it. If you're kind of really still upset about the way things didn't roll, and I 100% agree with you, and maybe probably skip it. I plan to do the Kickstarter. I think it's worthy. I think we're finally seeing the potential of this game when I first backed it come to fruition in an exciting way. So thanks again, and we'll see you next time on Harebrained Games.